Hi, I'm Marjorie. While I was lying in a hospital bed, tubes in my arms, barely conscious, my sister walked down the aisle, wearing white, and married my ex-husband. They didn't even wait for me to wake up. Then, in front of a crowd, he pointed at her and said, "She is my CEO." But it wasn't just a wedding, it was a takeover of my life, my legacy, my name. What kind of family steals everything from you while you're too weak to speak? And what happens when you finally stand back up? The fluorescent light above me buzzed with a low, persistent hum. I blinked up at it, the sharpness of the hospital ceiling coming into focus like an unwelcome truth. My throat felt like sandpaper, and my body was too heavy to move. Tubes trailed from my arms. I was in the ICU. Again. A nurse leaned over me, adjusting something near the IV pole. She offered a quick, tired smile. "You're awake. That's good." Her voice sounded far away, like she was speaking underwater. As she turned away, I caught sight of my phone on the side table. Its screen blinked with silent notifications. I reached out slowly, the effort making my arm tremble. One missed call. Then a group message preview from my cousin Lainey. "OMG, Isolde looks stunning. I can't believe she's marrying Lowell today." My vision tunneled. I tapped the screen with a shaking finger. More messages spilled out. Photos, smiling faces, white roses. Isolde's smug little grin beneath a lace veil. And Lowell, my husband. Or at least, he used to be. They hadn't even changed the venue. I recognized the arch of vines behind them, the wood-carved benches, details Lowell and I had once picked out during a spring weekend in Fredericksburg. He told me it felt like home. I guess it still did, just not for me. They didn't even bother to move it. They didn't change the place. Just me. I scrolled in silence, heart hammering. Picture after picture. Toasts being raised. My Aunt Corinne posing with Isolde. Captioned, "The true bride of our family." No mention of me. No acknowledgement. Not even a "wish you were here." My fingers curled into the blanket. It wasn't just that they did this behind my back. It was that they erased me from the entire story. A year ago, I'd had a hysterectomy. Complications led to infections, surgeries, now this. Through it all, Lowell had said he'd be there. "I'll never let you face pain alone," he'd whispered once, forehead against mine. That was before he stopped returning calls. Before his visits dwindled to none. Before Isolde started coming around more. "Just helping out," she said. Now I knew what she was helping herself to. A lump swelled in my throat, but I didn't cry. I didn't have it in me. Not from the shock, not even from the heartbreak. No. What undid me was the quiet inevitability of it. Somewhere deep down, I had known. I'd felt it in the stillness of my hospital nights, in the silence of unanswered texts, in the way Doreen, our mother, had stopped mentioning Lowell's name altogether. I opened Facebook. Doreen had just posted, "Proud of my daughter Isolde. She's always been the smart one. Found herself a real future." Beneath it, heart emojis, comments like "beautiful couple" and "she deserves this." I wasn't tagged. I wasn't mentioned. Scrolling through their digital parade of joy, I felt like a ghost in my own life, and not a single person seemed to notice I was missing, that I still existed, that I was here, attached to machines, alone in a room with the echoes of people who had decided I no longer mattered. Lowell had said he'd never leave me alone in pain, but he hadn't just left. He'd rewritten the story as if I had never been in it. The heart monitor ticked steadily beside me. I set the phone down, stared at the ceiling again. I let the stillness return, but this time, it wasn't peace I felt. It was rage. It settled in slowly, like a tide rising in my chest. Hot. Relentless. Quiet. "So this is how they plan to bury me," I whispered to no one. "While I'm still breathing. Link to next chapter." So this is how they plan to bury me, while I'm still breathing. The hospital discharged me earlier than expected. I didn't ask why. I didn't need a medical reason. The real one was simple. I didn't want to stay in that bed one more hour, surrounded by white walls and machines that hummed louder than any apology I would never receive. The cab ride back was quiet. I didn't tell the driver where we were going until we were halfway there. It wasn't home anymore, not technically, but the muscle memory took over, directions flowing from my mouth like I'd never left. When the car turned onto my old street, I noticed it right away. The porch was freshly painted. The bushes I used to trim every other Sunday were now replaced by planters of petunias. A new mailbox stood by the curb, the lettering crisp and black. Mr. and Mrs. Lowell +1 Foster. I didn't need to step out to know what had happened, but I did anyway. I walked up the driveway slowly. My legs still felt heavy from the surgery, or maybe it was something else weighing me down. I paused at the foot of the steps, not because I was unsure, but because I needed to see for myself how far they'd gone. I rang the doorbell. No one answered. I waited a beat longer, then stepped sideways to the small window by the kitchen. I had stood there so many times before, usually with a grocery bag in one hand and my keys in the other, peeking in at Lowell pouring coffee or Isolde. No, never her. Never before. Now I saw a scene that was heartbreakingly familiar. Same rug with the faded corner, same mismatched mugs lined on the counter, same bookshelf with the little ceramic cat I'd bought from a roadside stand outside Waco. But the photo above the fireplace had changed. It was our wedding photo once. Mine and Lowell's. The one where I wore that off-the-shoulder dress that my mother said made me look too hopeful. But now my face was gone. Isolde was there, wearing a different dress, but standing where I once stood. Her smile in my place. His arm still around a woman. Just not this one. Behind me, a voice called out. "Well, look who it is." I turned. It was Mrs. Hill from across the street. Her tiny dog, Snickers, barked twice, and then quieted. "I didn't know you were visiting Isolde again. Thought you two were still not speaking," she said, tucking a newspaper under her arm. I smiled because it was easier than crying. "Just passing by," I said softly. She nodded, distracted by her phone. "Well, good to see you, honey." I watched her walk back inside. Snickers gave me a final disinterested sniff before following her in. I took a step back from the window, then another. The concrete felt foreign under my shoes. I needed air, not hospital-filtered air, not suburban Sunday brunch air. I needed to breathe somewhere no one had tried to replace me. There was a small bench 2 blocks down at the corner, where the mail truck always parked. I made it there on foot, barely, and collapsed onto the wood like it might break beneath me. I pulled out my phone without thinking. There it was. Another notification from Doreen. Dinner with my 2 favorite people, Isolde and Lowell. The caption was simple. The photo was too. Them sitting around my old dining table. The vase in the center? I bought it at an estate sale for $7. The painting behind them? A gift I gave Lowell on our 3rd anniversary. No one had tagged me, of course. No mention, not even a trace of irony. They just carried on, as if I'd never existed in that space, like I'd been a guest in my own life. I looked at the bench I was sitting on, and remembered how I once carried home a bouquet for that dining table. I thought about how many times I waited at this very corner to be picked up by Lowell after work. And now? They were eating dinner off the plates I picked, drinking wine from the glasses I bought on sale at Target because we couldn't afford Crate and Barrel. I didn't cry. There weren't any tears left for this. Only silence, the kind that wraps around your chest and slowly tightens. "You didn't just steal my husband," I whispered, barely audible. "You're trying to erase me." My phone buzzed again. "You've been tagged in a family photo." The apartment was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind, not the kind that soothes. This was the kind that made your thoughts echo louder than any sound outside. I sat curled up on the far end of the couch, lights off except for the lamp on the side table. My phone rested on my stomach, its glow casting a ghostly shadow across my chest. I wasn't watching anything, just scrolling, past old emails, archived texts, Photos from a time when my name still meant something in the world I helped build. Facebook memories surfaced like ghosts. There I was at a local food drive in South Austin, arms full of donated canned goods. I remembered the sweat on my brow and the ache in my back from carrying boxes all day. Back then, it had mattered. Back then, it had been mine. A ping pulled me out of my haze. A friend from my old nonprofit days had messaged, "Have you seen the city homepage? They featured Isolde for her community work. Wild, right?" My heart thudded in that slow, deliberate way it always did, before something fell apart. I clicked the link. There she was. Isolde, smiling beneath a Women of Impact headline, credited as a founding force behind Vera & Co.'s community programs. My programs. Photos scrolled by beneath the article. At first, I couldn't breathe. The banners, the slogans, even the arrangement of the tables. I planned every bit of it. But in the images, it wasn't me handing out supplies or standing beside council members. It was her. Same events, same script, different face. Even the captions matched what I had written in our newsletters. They didn't even bother rewriting the content, just swapped out my name for hers. I closed the browser before I threw the phone. I sank back into the couch. My hands went cold. This wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just losing my husband, my home. This was worse. This was erasure. And the worst part? It hadn't started with that article. I stared at the ceiling and let the memories come, uninvited and unwelcome. The last real conversation I had with Isolde before the wedding still stung. "You're wasting your potential," she had said, waving a hand like she was brushing dust off her sleeve. "You could be so much more than a housewife, Marjorie, but you choose to play small." I'd responded with something defensive, something brittle. I don't even remember the words anymore, but I remember hers. "You never had vision." I did. Afterward, she had left the cafe without looking back. A few days later, Doreen called. "She's doing what you never could. She's going somewhere, Marjorie. And you're staying." That wasn't the first time she picked Isolde over me, but it was the first time she said it outright. I pushed off the couch, heart thudding now, not from fear, but from something hotter. I walked over to the bookshelf, one of the few things I took with me when I left the house, and pulled down a framed photo from a shelf. It was from the first community event I organized solo. I stared at it, at my younger self, grinning despite the exhaustion on her face. That girl had plans. That girl built something from scratch. I printed a copy of that photo and pinned it above my desk, over the generic art that came with the apartment. It didn't look grand, but it was mine. Not to mourn, but to remember. You may have edited me out, Isolde, but I remember everything. And unlike you, I never needed to lie to make something real. My laptop pinged again. New email. Subject line: legal terms for brand usage, Vera & Co. I didn't open it yet. I just stared at it. The sting was fading. Fire was taking its place. The email didn't address me by name. It was a mass blast. "Join us for an unforgettable evening honoring the visionary founder of Vera & Co., Isolde Foster." Attached was a graphic dripping with gold fonts, charity logos, and stock photos I recognized immediately, not from the internet, but from my own files. The grant that funded this event? I applied for it. I wrote the proposal, secured the backing, managed the reporting. Now Isolde was collecting the credit and the applause. I didn't RSVP. I just showed up. The event was held at a downtown civic center. I wore a navy blouse and slacks. Nothing dramatic. No makeup except for some concealer under my eyes and a little color on my lips. I wasn't there to make a scene. I just wanted to see how far she'd take it. Inside, the ballroom buzzed with soft jazz and the hum of catered small talk. A waiter offered champagne. I declined. My stomach was already tied up in too many knots. I stayed near the back. People brushed past me, none the wiser. I spotted the media table, the sponsor boards, even a few donors I once introduced to the Vera Project. Then the lights dimmed and the projector clicked on. A slideshow began, set to a piano instrumental I had used years ago in our very first campaign video. Photos scrolled across the screen: children with backpacks, volunteers planting gardens, speeches at City Hall. I recognized every single shot. One photo stopped me. My hands, cropped at the wrist, handing over a certificate. You couldn't see my face, but I knew it. The nail polish color. The ring I no longer wore. The MC's voice echoed from the stage. Tonight, we celebrate 10 years of unwavering commitment, visionary leadership, and tireless community building, all thanks to our founder, Isolde Foster. Applause followed, loud and full. Then she walked out. Isolde, in a burgundy sheath dress, hair sleek, smile polished. She paused center stage, letting the room soak her in. And then she began to speak. Word for word, it was my speech, my phrasing, my cadence. Lines I'd written in a late-night flurry 2 years ago after a storm flooded the East Side Center. She didn't even change the opening metaphor. A storm teaches us more than sunshine ever could. I stood there, frozen. If they had dimmed the lights a little more, I might have screamed. After the speech, guests mingled and shuffled toward the exits. I waited until the hallway cleared before slipping out a side door and intercepting one of the foundation's coordinators by the coat rack. He looked up, surprised. "Hi, can I help you?" "I wrote that speech," I said quietly. "I built that project. The photos you just used tonight were taken from a drive I created." He blinked, caught between guilt and protocol. We just followed the credits submitted by her team." I nodded slowly. "I understand. I just want you to do one thing." "Of course." "Tell Isolde if she uses one more photo I created, if she speaks one more sentence that came from my files, I'll make sure people know exactly who built that name she's wearing like a medal." He swallowed and nodded. "I'll let her know." Outside, the night air was crisp. I walked 3 blocks before I pulled out my phone and opened my archived folders. I selected everything: photos, drafts, budgets, time-stamped emails, and sent them to Delaney. Attached was a note. "It's time. Start gathering what you can, legally." Her reply came 10 minutes later. "Already on it, but be ready. People like her don't go down quietly." Back home, I poured a glass of water, sat down at my desk, and scrolled through old voice memos. One caught my attention. It was Lowell, recorded years ago. His voice crackled with static, but the words were clear. "Marge, I don't say it enough, but you saved Vera when we were drowning. Don't ever forget that." I renamed the file Proof, the Real Story, then uploaded it to a private drive. A few hours later, as I was closing my laptop, a sponsored ad appeared across my screen. "She is my CEO, celebrating Isolde Foster's legacy." I stared at it for a full minute before whispering to the empty room, "You've just declared war." The message came in just after lunch. No subject line, no text, just a link. I stared at it for a second, debating whether to click. Then curiosity got the better of me. I tapped it open, expecting maybe an article, maybe a photo. It was a live stream recording, a panel discussion from some corporate summit I'd never heard of. Bright stage, branded banners, a row of executives sitting on tall stools under soft lights. And there he was, Lowell. I hadn't seen him speak publicly in years. He looked leaner, like someone who was trying to polish the surface now that the inside had rotted. A moderator asked something about leadership during crisis. Lowell chuckled, leaned back, and said, "I can't take credit. She's the brains behind it all. She is my CEO." He gestured across the stage to where Isolde sat, nodding like the compliment surprised her, even though the camera caught the subtle smirk tugging at the edge of her mouth. Laughter broke out across the audience. One guy in the front whistled. The chat feed on the side lit up. "Power couple goals!" Guess the X was just a practice run. "She upgraded." I didn't move, didn't blink. I just let it play again. And again. It wasn't just that they were calling her the brains, the builder, the boss. It was the fact that I had been replaced, and then reduced to a footnote they could laugh about in a room full of strangers. Later that afternoon, I opened TikTok while trying to distract myself with something, anything. My notifications were full of forwarded videos. One stood out. I tapped it. Isolde was walking into a hospital room. Mine. Her makeup was perfect, the camera angled just right. She held a bouquet of flowers. Caption read, "Checking in on my baby sister. Family first." In the clip, she sat by my bed, adjusted the blanket, whispered to the camera, "She's been fragile since forever, poor thing." Then a sympathetic sigh. 2 million views. 30,000 likes. I had no idea she'd filmed that. I was unconscious. I had no way of consenting to it, let alone knowing she was turning my lowest moment into online empathy points. I sent Lowell a message that night. Short, sharp, "You made it public, so will I." He responded within minutes. "It's just PR. You're being dramatic again. Don't start this." I took a screenshot, saved it in a folder I'd renamed the week before. Litigation evidence. Then I called Delaney. By the time I laid it all out, livestream, TikTok, my materials repurposed, my name removed. Her voice had that clipped legal tone I'd come to recognize. "We start with a cease and desist," she said. "Then defamation. Then ownership fraud, if we find the right threads." "Let them laugh now," I said quietly, "but not for long." That weekend, I sat at my kitchen table with a secondhand tripod and my phone. I started recording short clips. Not polished, not filtered. Just truth. I told the story of how Vera & Co. was formed, the nights I spent building grant applications from scratch, the time I slept on a fold-out in the first community center because we didn't have money for a night guard. I didn't post them. Not yet. But every video was saved, dated, backed up 3 times. One clip ended with me saying, "I won't be silent anymore." Not when my silence became their stage. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of messages. My phone buzzed nonstop. Someone had leaked one of the test videos. Comments were already flooding in. "Why didn't we know about her? Wait, she's the real founder? This doesn't add up." I leaned back in my chair. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from clarity. This wasn't a war I started, but I would be damned if I didn't finish it. It started with a message from someone I barely remembered. Elio. He'd been a nursing intern during my hospital stay. Polite, forgettable, the kind of young man who always knocked before entering and avoided eye contact unless absolutely necessary. His message read, "You probably don't remember me, but I think you should see this." Attached was a secure link to hospital surveillance footage, time-stamped the morning after my surgery. I hesitated for a moment, then clicked. The video showed Isolde at the nurse's station. She looked calm, professional even. She slid a folder across the counter to the head nurse and said, "These are the updated medical directives. Marjorie granted me POA last week. She just forgot to bring it in." The nurse, clearly overworked, glanced at the form and nodded. No one called to confirm. No one questioned the timing. The clip ended with the folder being filed away. I watched it 3 times, just to be sure I wasn't imagining it. Then I forwarded it to Delaney with one sentence. She forged my signature while I was unconscious. When I called, Delaney's voice came through cold and direct. "That's not just family drama anymore. That's felony territory." She asked for everything: documents, timelines, anything that could show the POA was never valid. I spent the rest of the afternoon digging through emails and financial reports. By dinner time, I found it. 3 days after the forged directive had been submitted, a transfer had been made from one of my personal accounts into a consulting fund labeled Vera & Co. Growth. It wasn't the amount that caught me. It was the arrogance. The assumption that I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't dare fight. I sat in silence, the screen light bouncing off the wineglass beside me, still full. Instead of calling anyone, I opened my camera app. I steadied my breath, hit record. They thought I was too weak to fight, that I'd lie in a hospital bed while they rewrote my life. But I wasn't sleeping, I was watching, and now I'm moving. I uploaded it intentionally, no filter, no edits. The ripple came within hours. Comments poured in from women who had been sidelined, gaslit, replaced. Then the hashtags started. Xiaox Real founder, Shirk fight for Marjorie. And just as quickly, silence from Vera and Co.'s end. But not from their investors. Delaney called the next morning with her usual calm but clipped tone. We've had 3 inquiries from their backers asking for verification on your involvement. Apparently, they didn't know you existed. Oh, they know now. We scheduled an in-person meeting for the next day to formally draft the fraud complaint. As I gathered the last of my paperwork, I opened one of my older folders and found something I hadn't planned on. A voice memo. It was Lowell's voice, raspy from a late night. You know, Marge, without you, Vera never would have made it through that first year. Hell, we wouldn't have made it past month 3. You saved us. You saved me. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel vindicated. I saved the file under a new name, Proof, Phase 1. Later that night, while reviewing messages from Delaney, an ad popped up between emails. She is my CEO, celebrating a decade of leadership. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then leaned back in my chair. You forged my name, I whispered. Now I'm signing the end of yours. The next morning, Delaney called with just 5 words. We have grounds now, real legal ground. I created a new folder on my desktop and named it. The lawsuit begins. The subject line read, he said it himself. I almost didn't open the email. It came from an anonymous burner account, just a string of random letters and numbers. But curiosity and instinct pushed me through. Inside was a single audio file. I hesitated for only a second before I hit play. Lowell's voice came through the speaker, unmistakably smug. You know what's wild? He said, laughing. I pulled it off. I got to have both, the past and the future, in one damn ceremony. The man he was talking to laughed with him, a deep corporate kind of laugh, like they'd just signed a deal instead of mocking a woman they'd erased. I sat back in my chair, the audio looping in my head. Not just the betrayal, it was the pride, the lack of shame, the joy in getting away with it. By mid-morning, I was at Delaney's office with my laptop and a folder of supporting files. We went through everything. She helped me cross-reference dates, check metadata on photos, scan credit card receipts, and booking confirmations. The affair didn't start after the divorce like they claimed. It had been active for well over a year before I even knew my marriage was cracking. Isolde and Lowell had stayed at a downtown hotel under fake names 3 times. Once during a weekend, when he told me he was at a business seminar. The receipts were in the folder, so were screenshots of emails with intimate subject lines and hotel check-in confirmations, all time-stamped, all damning. This alone is enough to destroy their credibility, Delaney said. But it gets better, I added, pulling up the next file. A former employee of Lowell's sent me a thread of internal emails. He was in accounting back then, and apparently, he'd grown tired of watching Lowell funnel money out of our shared foundation accounts behind my back. One email, dated 4 weeks before my hospital stay, read, Once she's out of the picture, we'll rebrand and go public. I remember my hands shaking, but not from sadness. It was focus now, fire, precision. We released the full timeline to a journalist I trusted, someone who didn't chase scandal, but knew how to dig into patterns of power, of betrayal, of silencing. The story dropped 2 days later. Headline, CEO built on lies, the woman who was written out. Social media took it from there. It trended within 12 hours. The hashtag #MarjorieBuiltVera started popping up on Twitter, Facebook, even LinkedIn. Isolde posted a quote from some old philosopher about the burden of brilliance and how true visionaries are always misunderstood. The comments section? A war zone. You stole her work? Visionary? More like thief with a spray tan. If you're so smart, why'd you need your sister's voice to speak? That afternoon, the phone rang. I hadn't heard his voice since the hospital. Lowell. He didn't start with hello. You made this public. Why? I didn't, I said. You did. On stage, on tape, remember? You left me with nothing. You stopped supporting me, stopped believing in me. She filled that space. She filled it because you made the space, I replied. You tore everything out and then blamed me for the void. He sighed. You always made things harder than they had to be. And now you're empty again, I said, then hung up. Delaney called me shortly after, with a low, tight tone. Media outlets are digging into Vera's financials now. We need to stay ahead of this. I was about to respond when another text popped up. Unknown number. You're not done yet. There's one more thing to see. No attachments, no links. Just a message that felt like a spark in dry grass. I looked up at my reflection in the black screen of my laptop. This wasn't the end. It was only the next phase. The night was warm for March, the air tinged with that humid buzz Austin gets right before a storm rolls in. My heels clicked against the marble steps of the conference center, slow and deliberate. The lights outside sparkled like the city was throwing its own gala. Maybe it was. I didn't come alone. Thatcher walked beside me, calm and sharp in a dark gray suit that made him look every inch the executive he was, and every bit the storm they never saw coming. His presence alone drew glances, but it was me they were whispering about. Is that? She looks like... Wait, is that Marjorie? A few cameras turned. Flashbulbs flared. Not quite sure if they should focus yet. I didn't stop walking. I didn't flinch. The lobby glowed with soft golds and deep blues. Sponsors milled around clutching glasses of rosé. Media reps whispered to their assistants. And at the center of it all, a massive banner fluttered against the back wall. Vera & Co. Annual Gala, celebrating a decade of visionary leadership. The irony nearly knocked the wind out of me. Inside the ballroom, everything was staged. From the music to the lighting to the sea of navy blue gowns, it was designed to impress, to distract. Isolde stood at the podium, surrounded by applause, dressed in deep red like the hero of her own myth. Her speech was polished, dramatic. She spoke of community, of growth, of sacrifice. Then, just as the slideshow behind her cued the next montage, the screen glitched, just slightly. Then flickered again. Then it changed. Lowell's voice from that recording came through the speakers. I pulled it off. I got to have both, the past and the future, in one damn ceremony. Gasps. Then the screen lit up with charity footage. The real footage. My face front and center, organizing supplies, shaking hands, speaking on behalf of Vera when it was still struggling to pay rent. A beat of silence fell over the crowd. Then murmurs. Then a wave of voices asking questions all at once. Isolde's lips parted, but no words came. Lowell, sitting near the front, stood abruptly and made for the stage. A security guard blocked him before he got close. Thatcher stepped forward, composed. We're filing a formal challenge to her claim as sole founder, he said, addressing the crowd. We have financial records, original filings, timestamps, and verified digital evidence proving otherwise. A reporter from the Statesman pushed to the front. Is this going public? Thatcher nodded. It already is. Someone handed me the mic. I hadn't planned on speaking. I hadn't written anything down. But my hands didn't shake as I took it. I didn't come here for revenge, I said, my voice steady. I came here to reclaim what was mine, and what was never theirs. A pause. And then applause. Slow at first, then building, one woman stood. Then another. I scanned the room and saw Isolde staring at the floor. She didn't even look up. Her shoulders had that familiar slump, like when we were kids, and she got caught lying about stealing my diary. Only this time, she didn't deny it. She just looked small. I handed back the mic, walked down the side aisle where Delaney waited, and together we left the ballroom. Lowell stood frozen by the bar, alone in a sea of people who had once called him brilliant. Outside, I didn't speak until the valet pulled up. Thatcher opened the door for me, and I slid inside. Delaney followed behind us. My phone buzzed as I settled into the seat. A new notification blinked at the top of the screen. "You've been reinstated as founder on Vera & Co.'s registry." I smiled, not out of joy, but relief. Like a weight had finally shifted off my name. "Almost done," I murmured. When I opened the door to my new apartment, I expected the usual feeling that came with endings: emptiness. But instead, it was just quiet. A good quiet. No cameras outside, no legal papers on the table, no emails screaming for attention. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the light filtering in through sheer curtains I'd picked myself. I set my keys in a dish by the door, walked over to the laptop, and tapped it open. There it was. Vera & Co.'s official website, newly updated. Founder, Marjorie Wallace. Underneath, in a smaller font, Founder Emerita. The page no longer bore Isolde's name. A short note in italics. Former CEO Isolde Foster has stepped down to prioritize her mental health. Lowell, from what I'd heard, had filed for bankruptcy. Last anyone saw of him, he was trying to pitch a startup that no one would touch. No part of me celebrated that. Some losses don't bring joy, just space to breathe again. Later that week, I sat at my desk with a pen in my hand and a blank card in front of me. I wrote to my mother. It wasn't rage that filled the ink, just truth. "You chose her because you thought I'd never leave the background. And you were right. I stayed in the shadows because I thought it made me noble. Turns out, it just made me invisible. But now I've chosen to never go back." I didn't sign it. I didn't seal it. I burned it in a small tea light on the kitchen counter, watched the corners curl inward like a closing eye. The next day, I met Bettina at the coffee shop we used to haunt when life still felt like it had open doors. She was already seated, 2 cups on the table. I hadn't even sat down when she looked up and asked, "Do you feel lighter?" I smiled. "No," I said. "I feel visible." She laughed. "That's heavier sometimes." "Yeah," I nodded. "But it's mine now." We didn't talk much after that. Some friendships don't need words to function, just time and presence. That weekend, Thatcher stopped by. He was flying out the next morning for a months-long trip, some major acquisition deal overseas. He looked tired but calm, fulfilled. "If you ever need someone on your team again," he said, setting down a wrapped jar of local honey on my kitchen counter. "I still believe in your eye for things." I hugged him, not like a woman clinging to a maybe love, but like someone who knew the value of a person who showed up when it mattered. After he left, I packed a small bag and drove out to the lake where I used to sit and sketch designs for outreach programs. The bench was still there, weathered now. I pulled out my notebook, not the one filled with battle plans, but the old one. The one that still had doodles of garden plots and kid-friendly food truck concepts. I didn't open it to rewrite. I opened it because it felt right. I wrote a line. Maybe I'll create something again. Then, below it. Or maybe I'll just live. The water rippled in the wind. I let myself breathe it in. As I stood to leave, I looked back one more time and whispered, not bitterly, not triumphantly, just honestly. They tried to erase me. I rewrote the ending. And the breeze moved through the trees like it agreed. In life, there will be moments when you're forced to choose between staying quiet or standing up, even when your voice shakes. I spent years letting others speak over me, define me, erase me. But the truth is, no one can take away what you've built if you know your worth and are willing to fight for it. With grace, not noise. Maybe you've been there too. Overlooked, undervalued, replaced. If you have, I hope this story reminds you, it's never too late to reclaim your name. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to fight for the truth when everyone else clapped for the lie? If this story touched your heart, leave a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, tell me why. I want to hear your truth too. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories that matter. Your voice belongs here.